what we know without a doubt, literally the only thing that we know as humans is that we will die. Despite that, we don't want to plan for it. We're in denial about it. And so Wills for the People takes a culturally responsive perspective when working with clients.
So, welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast, Whitney Knox Lee. So, Whitney, you and I chatted maybe a month or two ago when somebody recommended you for the podcast, and I was like, lawyer, podcaster, yes. So, would you tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing and who you are?
Yeah, my name is Whitney Knox Lee. I am a anti-racism equity consultant to workplaces. I am an attorney. I'm also a podcast host. My podcast is Impostrix Podcast, where we validate professionals of color navigating imposter experiences and racial toxicity within their career. So I've been a career public interest attorney, left my last job about 6 months ago to do consulting full time. Had basically had enough. I didn't love law. At the time, I was in civil rights here in Atlanta, and it was a dream job that didn't end up being a dream. And really, the dream role, it wasn't so much the job as it was the reality of being a civil rights attorney. And so left, became a consultant full time, which I had been doing as a side hustle for 7 years. And just recently, I launched my legal practice, Wills for the People, which is an estate planning practice that centers Black households, communities of color, emerging wealth households making up to 1 million in net worth.
Yes. Okay, so much to unpack. This is going to be real basic of me, but did you watch the show Insecure?
Yes.
With Issa? Okay.
For a couple seasons.
Okay, well, in the final season, they try to talk to, I can't think of her name right now, the girl who's the accountant and the banker. They try to talk her into helping people do estate planning and get wills. And they're like, it's such a big deal. Black households do not have wills. Why was it important for you to create Wills for the People and make sure that emerging wealthy households are protecting themselves?
Throughout the United States, the wealth equity gap is such that white households have about 6 times the wealth of Black households. In Georgia, white households have 8 times the wealth. And in Atlanta, where I live, there's 46 times the wealth of Black households. So I am a race equity consultant. I am very concerned about race equity. I'm very concerned about anti-racism. I am very concerned about white supremacy culture in our workplaces, etc. And one of the ways that white supremacy continues is through power. And in a capitalist society like ours, money is power.
Yeah.
And of course, there's lots of reasons why Black households have less wealth, stemming back to enslaved Africans being taken from their homes, being taken from their wealth, being turned into property, working for free, and then followed by a century of Jim Crow. So it's only been since around the 1960s that Black folks have had the opportunity to actually earn wages, but even then our wages have not been equitable.
Right.
And have not been without sabotage through things like redlining and other practices that were legal again up until around the 60s. So all that to say, I started Wills for the People as a way to address racial wealth equity from a different perspective, if you will. So in the past, I've been focused on civil rights. I've been focused on individual rights in things like food stamps and public benefits and economic security. Now, I wanted to find something that would be sustainable for me. And that means less emotional, honestly.
Yeah.
And estate planning is that. So I had some experience in estate planning from prior positions. And it is just so important that Black people plan for their wealth. What we know, without a doubt, literally the only thing that we know as humans is that we will die. Despite that, we don't want to plan for it. We're in denial about it. And in some communities of color, we even believe that it's bad luck to talk about death. And so Wills for the People takes a culturally responsive perspective when working with clients, and we want to make our services accessible, not only
Yeah.
in terms of the language that we use, like let's stop with the legalese, not only in terms of the language, but also in terms of the affordability, also in terms of being able to access us virtually or a hybrid instead of needing to be in person. So there's a lot of challenges that communities of color and particularly Black communities face when trying to build wealth. And estate planning is one of the things that we can do to protect what wealth we do have, to be able to create that real wealth, the over the millions of dollars of wealth.
Yeah. Whitney, I love everything you're saying because my husband and I talk about being wealthy, and I get a smile on my face because I'm like, are we allowed to do that? Like, can we have the stuff that other people have? And I remember when I'm sitting in my house, and for my whole life I had an apartment. I was like, I'm fine with apartments. I know what my expenses will be. And my husband's like, yeah, but you're thinking about you. When we have a house, we have an asset. We can then pass that down, or we can sell it, and then we have multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to give to someone else, or we can keep it and it's an investment property. And I'm like, who taught you to think like that? Right? I'm like, where did you learn that? Because it sounds like from what you're saying is that there's systematic reasons why we're not as wealthy. It's not just the fact that Black women make like 66 cents to every $1 that a white male makes in America. There's bigger reasons. And even coming down to even thinking about being wealthy feels like a secret. I wouldn't go to my family reunion and tell people, y'all know I'm about to be wealthy, because people would think I was crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So why are you trying to change that conversation and get us to discuss these things?
And I'll also say, just before I answer that, culturally, but socially in our cultures, at the point at which we become, quote, wealthy, we're Uncle Tom's.
Yep.
Or we have somehow sold out. We are no longer accepted as part of the Black community or as part of, I don't know, well, I'm Black, so I'm going to speak for me and my community.
We're out of the struggle.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's also, as you're describing, an identity situation. I don't know if I want to call it crisis, but situation. Many of us, I don't know about you, but growing up, I would be called an Oreo, Black on the outside, white on the inside. Many of us have these identity issues where we are feeling not Black enough, being able to code switch, being able to speak the language of whiteness is a skill. And so it also makes us come to terms with how we have assimilated in order to be successful, and that not everyone who we grew up with had that luxury, had that privilege of being able to obtain that skill and then use it somewhere to make money. So it's a really a packed and complex, right, dynamic that we're experiencing when we're talking about people of color building and growing wealth and being wealthy. I've never said this out loud, but I just wonder collectively as a community how much of the community is resentful towards wealthy Black people.
Well, I think even for me, it's okay to see someone on TV, or it's okay to read Rachel Rodgers' book because I don't know her personally. And you're like, I'm so excited for you. We should all be millionaires. Teach us how to have 7 figures, not just 6 figures, 7 figures. That's when you get to the millions, what you're talking about. But again, if I found out that my neighbor next door was a millionaire, how? Right? If for some reason it doesn't feel personal or attainable, it feels like, oh, I can celebrate this person on TV or this person on a book cover. Right? But also I think it's because I've never had that conversation. People don't even talk to me about how many bank accounts do you have, let alone are you making $1 million? Let alone how are you protecting the $1 million? You know what I mean? So there's a whole like foundation of even discussing money that we don't even do.
We do not. So we talk a lot about financial literacy in communities of color, which is very important. But even financial literacy, we're not necessarily talking about normalizing talking about money. Like, hopefully that is what happens as we send our children to these financial literacy camps. Hopefully that's what happens. But in the family that I grew up in, which was a middle-class Black family, we did not talk about money. My parents worked, but we didn't talk about money. As an adolescent, as a college student, as a young adult, I complained about money, about not having enough of it, But I was definitely that college student who got a credit card literally the first day in college, had no idea how credit cards worked, thought it was just free money, and destroyed my credit because I didn't understand that I had to pay money back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do not talk about it. And part of our strategy at Wills for the People is making estate planning a social event. And so encouraging, sister circles, encouraging the bros, the bras, the whoever's to talk about it amongst each other and then to actually do something about it. So we offer, I haven't come up with a great name yet, but power of attorney parties.
Okay.
Uh, because power of attorney documents are documents that can be done with just legal information. You don't need legal advice to
Mm-hmm.
complete a power of attorney document. They also can be done in one sitting. Have a notary there, have your brunch or your appetizers, and then save your glass of champagne for once it's executed and sit back and chill. Now, is power of attorney, are power of attorney documents related to generational wealth? I think so.
Yeah.
Like, I think these types of documents are foundational. This is what we are building our estate plan on top of: power of attorneys and wills. We should not stop there, but powers of attorneys, as I know you know, allow us to choose somebody that we trust to
Mm-hmm.
help us manage our finances or manage our health. Health is a huge deal, of course, because if we're on life support for 10 months when we don't want to be on life support, that means our family is going to have to go into their estate to pay for that 10 months of life support that I've received,
Yeah.
versus being able to identify to my agent through a piece of paper that I don't want to be on life support, and then authorizing that person to make that decision or other decisions that have financial consequences.
I love this. It's the conversation is making me so emotional because I've heard of power of attorneys. Of course, you hear about it in law school. You see people talk about them on TV. But it wasn't until my dad passed away 3 years ago that my mom was like, "We didn't have this. We had a will. I made them get a will. They had changed it multiple times before he passed." And then she's like, "Okay, so I'm dealing with this. And then now we have his estate." And my mom has her name, and then she goes by a nickname, but her nickname is on her license. So
Oh,
the house was
Lord.
in the nickname. You know what I
Mama.
mean? Like how you got Cindy and Cynthia and stuff like that. And there was all this stuff, and people don't think about these things as being legal documents. You know what I mean? They're like, well, then who's Cindy and who's this, and why is that person's name on here? So there was a lot of stuff we had to go through, and I love the fact that if you have these power of attorney parties, if you're talking to people about wills for the people, you're normalizing the conversation. Oh, I just went to a power of attorney party. What's that? Oh, you should
Right.
have your stuff in order, because if you're listening to this, you're either a law student or you're someone interested in the law or you're interested in career changes. Welcome. But everybody doesn't talk about this. People do not. I remember when I got life insurance at 25, and I got it because my college friend was selling it. No one would give me a policy. You're not married. All you have is a car. You don't have kids. Why do you need life insurance? Because I'm alive and I just don't know how much it's going to cost. No, no one would give me a policy. And he's like, "Oh, I just started selling insurance. I'll sell you a policy." I was like, "Well, thank you." I got like the cheapest premiums ever now because I got in so early. But it's crazy that we don't think about these things until we're older.
Girl, it's a huge undertaking. But let me speak to about your mom is
Yeah.
that women outlive men. So the reality for many of us women is that we will outlive our male family members, relatives, husbands. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on my husband about life insurance because I'm constantly thinking, you gonna die before me. So I need you to up your life insurance so that I can have some money. Like,
Yeah.
God
It's
forbid he
one
die
less
after
thing to
this.
think about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And it's just, look, this is reality. Like, let's not be in denial about it. Now, it is overwhelming to think about, quote, the estate plan, because it is the case that estate planning is more than POAs and wills.
Yeah.
It's trusts, it's probate court and probate issues, it's life insurance, it's beneficiary, it's a lot of things. And what I have to say is start somewhere. Like, just get started. So the POA parties are the only kind of group besides just general educational seminars and stuff, which are free. The POA parties are the only kind of group thing because estate planning is so personal. It is very dependent on not only your estate, but what your goals are. As you talked about your husband saying, the value of a house and we can do all these things with it. You can do so much with what you have. So it's really difficult. Like I'm not even going to try and advise multiple people at one time. No.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, I got it. So a couple things keep running through my head, and then we're going to go back to your beginning because you're from Seattle or the Pacific Northwest, right?
Seattle,
so we got to talk about that too. How are you funding this? And were there people that were like, this is not lucrative? Like, are you accepting donations and people pay or what?
Girl, look, if somebody listening to this is a millionaire and has money and wants to sponsor this venture, please hit me up.
Yeah.
Please, Whitney at willsforthepeoplega.com, because I'm funding this.
Okay.
And luckily, we're in a time when we can do things virtually. So I am not paying for office space. I have a, quote, virtual office. I have a registered agent. I pay for like a cajillion monthly subscriptions for all the things that you apparently need to run businesses. But I'm funding it. My expenses are pretty low. The issue that I'm having now is capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is I want my services to be accessible.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, people of color don't have as much money as white people, period.
Yeah.
So can I expect people of color to be able to invest as much as white people in this service? I think I cannot. Now, this is an investment. I certainly think people should be paying for estate planning. I would not recommend online stuff where you don't get actual advice and you're not really sure what you're saying in these documents. But I also think that estate planning has to be accessible in order for people to access it. If it's going to cost me $3,000 for a will, and I'm just somebody with a house and some kids, and I don't want things to be very complicated, like I'm not going to pay $3,000 for that.
And if you have the $3,000, why would I give it to you? You know what I mean? Like, why not just keep it if I have it? So there's a bunch of hurdles.
Right. And it's like, I'm not going to get the number exactly right, but the median wealth in Atlanta for Black households is like $5,000. That's the median wealth. So half of people have more than that. Half of the Black people in Atlanta, Black Mecca, Wakanda, have less than $5,000 of wealth. So if they have less than $5,000 of wealth, and I don't know exactly what that wealth is in the form of, if that's in savings, if that's in all of their assets minus all of their student loan debt equals $5,000. But I can assume that they're not going to spend their $3,000 of their $5,000 total wealth on me.
We want everyone to have a will, whether you're affluent or not. But we don't want to exclude. You want it to be accessible. So I'm like, okay, we definitely can do the donations. People love to donate for a cause. Your $25 donation supports me creating wills for 10 people or something.
Yep.
And then grants and things like that. We're going to figure this out. Yeah.
So I have not been grant writing and looking for money at this point because I have another business and a podcast and children and a husband. Right. And so I've really just been focused on getting it launched. But going back to my struggle around capitalism is that when I had my prices set very low, not only do I think it rubbed professionals in the industry the wrong way, like I was trying to undercut them, but also coaches that I was speaking to were like, but you got to charge enough to make a living. Like you still have to make a living. So my predicament is charging enough to make a living and to be accessible to people. And so right now I've increased my prices, which means that it's going to be less accessible for some. Some people are going to have to actually make an investment. It is an investment, but I do charge under market value, and the POA parties are like deeply discounted if you would do a POA party versus coming to me for individual one-on-one with a POA and a financial. But like I said, I would love some money, some donations. So
So everyone is going to want to know, do you only help people in Georgia create wills, or can you help people nationwide?
It just depends. Certainly, though, there are some basics to estate planning that everyone should know. So, like, I encourage people to come to my educational seminars because that might be helpful. But if you're not in Georgia, you need to take it with a grain of salt and go, like, check with an attorney in your actual area.
I got you.
But everybody knows
Oh,
somebody in Georgia, right?
everybody does. My family's from Jonesboro, so I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Whitney, I love that you said that. So, if you guys are in Georgia, contact Whitney. She will help you out. But the thing I keep thinking about is the fact that I went to law school in Louisiana. So, I learned Louisiana law. And then I moved back to Ohio, and people got all these questions. And, everybody's cousin, mom, uncle, oh, I got into a car accident. I got this, I got that. I need help. Oh, I only know Louisiana law. That was my way to get out of it because everybody wants a referral. Everybody wants some help. But I say that because estate planning often is state specific, right? So where did you go to law school? Where are you from? And how did you get to Georgia?
Yeah, so I'm from Seattle, went to undergrad and graduate school in Seattle at Seattle University and Seattle University School of Law. But during my 3L year, I hated school. Kyla laughed and texted me after I filled out her little form for the podcast because she has the audacity, the nerve to ask a question of like, what was it? Did you like law school or something?
Would you go again?
Mm-hmm. And all I could say was, F no. Why would anyone? Like, are you serious with this question? Why? So I hated law school. I actually, fun fact, I called myself dropping out of law school. I did a year and a semester, so a year and a half full time, and was like, this is like, they lied. They lied. This is not what I thought it was going to be. Let me go back to social work because that's what I had done before. Got into social work full time, but then realized I had less power. So for me, getting a JD was all about power in my advocacy for racial justice. And so I went back to law school part-time as an evening student. And so my fourth year, I guess, as an evening student, I did externships. So I moved to Atlanta, worked for a death penalty advocacy organization, and then moved to Austin, Texas, where I worked for a civil rights organization and spent some time in Ireland as well and Spain doing some study abroad.
Why not?
Anything to stay out of like the classroom.
Okay.
How did I get, so I basically just did the reverse migration. I wanted to be around Black folks where it wasn't just that I was serving Black folks as clients, but that I was living amongst Black folks. So I actually moved to Southern Georgia for 6 or 7 years. And then my husband and I moved up to Atlanta. So I did not know Georgia law. I took the Georgia bar. I didn't take the Washington bar, but the law that I learned was mostly Washington law. And it was an adjustment learning Georgia law, but frankly, I didn't get it anyway. I didn't get the Washington law. Like, none of that makes sense until you're actually out practicing. So, like,
and everything's different in Georgia. My brother just moved back. I have a younger brother, and he's like, I pay $500 a year in my license plate fees. I'm like, yeah, but y'all got those roller coaster 9-lane highways. Like, somebody has to keep those paved. Like, it's worth it. He's like, my actual fees, you know what I mean? My license is cheap, but then like the taxes, I'm like, somebody's got to pay for the stuff. Okay, so from Seattle, went to school in Seattle, bounced around Ireland here and there, Southern Georgia, and now you're in Atlanta. I love the way you describe that because I went to school in Baton Rouge, and when people hear Louisiana, they only think New Orleans. Well, New Orleans is the Atlanta, is the New York City. The rest of the state is not Atlanta, New York City, New Orleans, right? The rest of the state is rural. We had people, riding horses to class. But it's a good education in its own to see people living in a different way.
Yeah.
So you sound excited about Wheels for the People.
Look, girl,
Have you changed your mind about law school? I mean, you are using your power.
Look, no, I have not changed my mind.
Okay.
I honestly don't. Especially now with AI, I don't know why law school exists. I don't know why we need it. Look, I am angry at how much law school costs. One of the reasons why I took that time off was because I had been so burnt out in advocacy within the law school around things like tuition, around things like the law school offering childcare to make it more accessible to people. Like, that's always where my brain is at. is accessibility and like acknowledging that having a JD is power. So we should make it so that people can access it. So I don't think it should cost that much. I don't think it should be as long as it is. I think we should be doing more experiential learning and less book learning. I get it. I get that we need to know civil procedure. I get, some of this stuff. But for me, I'm especially an experiential learner. So being out in the field and having actual jobs has been how I learned. I didn't even understand what civil procedure was about until I was practicing law. Like, I sat through whole classes of civil procedure and was like, it's almost too basic to
Yeah.
get. It's like,
Yeah.
why are we talking about this? Why are we spending days on Twombly? What? Well, I did not like law
Yeah.
school. I suggest that if people want to go to law school, first think about, can you do what you want to do before you go to, like, without going to law school? Like, what do you
Yeah.
need it for? And is there another way to get it? And I don't get
So,
you people that liked law school.
well, here's the deal. It's two parts. First part, I was never called an Oreo because I became the class clown. That was my way of being laughy, jokey, being surrounded by all white people. From Ohio, grew up in Ohio, so I was a class clown. But that was also why I went to a HBCU for law school, because I was like, let me see other people like me. Oh, wow, the smartest people in the room can be Black. Oh, wow, you know what I mean? This is different. Now, I'm Black American from Ohio, which is not Southern Louisiana. So you know what I mean? They're like, I'm going to football games and I'm trying to buy a jersey, and they're like, we wear dresses and cute outfits. And I was like, oh, I paint my face. You know what I mean?
And like boots. Do they wear cowboy boots too?
Boots, but they got to be cute. They're going to be like teal or purple or something.
Right.
It wasn't, they don't get sportsy. They're like, no, we're still cute polos with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, this wasn't the homecoming I was expecting. But so I loved it because I did a whole bunch of leadership stuff. I became editor-in-chief and was able to do all these things. But I say that because maybe we need to create like a advocacy course or training, because Americans love to pay for a good class. And I think that's why universities and law schools still exist. But most law students just want to advocate. You wanted to advocate. I've been advocating my entire life. To me, the word advocate is synonymous with being a lawyer. And this podcast is teaching everyone that is not true. You can advocate without being a lawyer. So maybe we need to write some books. We need to do something to teach people all of these things are advocating. It's not only being a lawyer, because that's why most people go.
Yeah, and we can do it in other disciplines. We can do it in social work. We can do it in psychology. We can do it in economics. We can do it in business management. Right.
And estate building. All of that is advocating for your future. Yeah.
Right. So that is my advice to people who are considering law school is, can you do it without spending those 3 years and that $150,000? Now, if you got a full ride, okay.
I don't see the sincerity. You're still like, I wouldn't spend it.
I mean, look, I would I have gone if I had a full ride? You couldn't pay me to go back to law school. So no, I would not go back to law school even if I had a full ride.
Because you still spent the time, even if you didn't have to spend the money.
Right.
Yeah.
And the stress and the, like, when I go into law schools now for like speaking engagements or for seminars or whatever, I get PTSD from the libraries. Like, I do not want to be in your law school library. I don't want to see those little study booths. I don't want to smell the books. I don't want it to be like dead quiet. I don't want to see people with their bag of chips in the study rooms. I don't want any of it. Stay away from me.
See, that's why this podcast exists, because I love my law library. When I was in 3L, I was like, I don't even think I'm going to practice. I think I'm going to become a law librarian. I loved my librarian. She was so amazing. Okay, so question I keep thinking about. Did you know any lawyers before you went to law school?
I did, yeah. My dad is an attorney, labor and employment. And so I grew up going to his firm, and he was in big law. Yeah. I grew up going to his firm for whatever their holiday events would be. And I had an internship like in the mailroom type of thing. Yeah. I never wanted to be an attorney. In fact, I did not want to be an attorney until my senior year in college, because for my social work practicum internship, I was placed in a public defender's office doing what's called forensic social work, mitigation work. And that was where I was like, oh, lawyers have the power here. The social workers don't have the power. They're team members. They're great. Clients love them, all of that stuff, but they don't have the power. The lawyers have the power. So my law school experience was literally last minute decision. I took the last LSAT. I got a very mediocre score. I applied to 2 schools that were both Jesuit schools because I liked the Jesuits because of their service commitment. So I applied the last day for both of them, got admitted in the summer, like the summer before school starts, got admitted. And there was no money left. There was no like scholarship money left, and did law school. So like for me, it wasn't, even though what I saw from my dad was that he wasn't home, that he was traveling, that he was getting up at 5. He would leave the house at 5 in the morning so that he could come home and be home by 5 at night to do all of our sports and all of this stuff. And who wants that life? Really, does anybody want that life?
Subconsciously, you wanted some of it. You were like, let me just go see. Maybe? No.
I would always tell him, once I did get into law school, that I'm not going to be the type of lawyer that you were, Dad. I'm going to be a part-time lawyer so that I don't have to work from 5 a.m. until 5 p.m. And he would just laugh at me. And like, I didn't know that like civil rights attorneys worked like that. I didn't know. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And even being, big law, all of it is hard. Well, I won't say all of it. I don't know about real estate. If you're a real estate lawyer, I wonder about you.
Listen, some of these property descriptions, all of it is hard.
Look, copy and paste.
No, I just told someone the other day, you got to read property descriptions out loud. I'm talking like left hand, comma, you got to, it's detailed. But I just told someone the other day, because they were like, why did you switch? And I was like, being a lawyer is stressful. You have a conflict with another person that y'all can't work out on your own without bringing in another person. That, by definition, is stressful. So I was like, it's doing other things, being a podcaster, being a parent, being a spouse, it can be stressful, but that job in itself is a different level. We do, at least I do, I tend to bring that same passion to the other things that I'm excited about. But it is nice to have the flexibility to turn it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the preparation I put into the podcast, most of that I get because I learned how to research from law school. Most of that I get because I have the big law training. I didn't know I needed an assistant till I started billing my hours as a podcaster. And I was like, girl, this is taking over your life. You need to hire some people. Which is my transition into the Imposterix podcast.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, it's giving me imposter syndrome. Is it a play on that or what?
Yeah, so Imposterix podcast is really my healing space. It started as this acknowledgement that as a Black female attorney in the South, I experienced what I thought at the time was imposter syndrome, what I now identify as just white supremacy. And the reason why I say that is I'm enough. I know the things. I am not a fraud.
Yeah.
If I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm learning some new things in estate planning, then I just say I don't know what I'm doing and I can't do that service for you. Like that is the kind of attorney that I am. So if I'm walking into a room and I feel like a fraud, more often than not, because I'm the only one in that room that looks like me, or because I'm the only one that talks like me, or I'm the only female, or some external thing, or like maybe I think that their expectation of me is something different. It's all external facing. So there are times when I do experience actual self-doubt, but those are few and far between. And then that's a me problem. And I just call that self-doubt instead of imposter syndrome. So I think what we're having is imposter experiences, which is a term that I read from Elizabeth Leba's book, I'm Not Yelling, about Black women in the workplace. I think that we have the experience of being an imposter because that's what we're told, because these places literally were not made for us, because the law was built on our backs as a way to subjugate people, and particularly Black people and Indigenous people. It was never meant to champion our success. And so it makes total sense that when I walk into this space, I feel other. So it was a acknowledgement of that, and an explicit acknowledgement that there is racial toxicity in our work environments, whether that is in the law or any other work environment. All of our workspaces were built upon white supremacy norms and values. And that's not good or bad at this point. That just is what it is. And we have to take steps in order to keep that from harming people. We have to take steps to mitigate that and to provide reparative justice within those organizations. So much of an experience as a Black female attorney for me was the quote imposter syndrome, but also the weird gaslighting. And it wasn't even like, it didn't even have to be in the form of words. It didn't need to be me saying, oh, I experienced this, and somebody else saying, no, you didn't. It was just in my presence in the courtroom felt like I was invisible.
Yeah.
And
not invisible, but invisible. It's like everyone's looking at you, but then you're also invisible. So it's like a glow in the dark ghost.
Yeah.
I get all the attention, but then also y'all don't see me.
Yeah.
Make it make
or you
sense.
Don't think I'm a lawyer. You think I'm a secretary. You think I'm
Or
the defendant, the paralegal. You think I'm anything but the attorney that has the power. And that experience is just so bizarre. Because I'm a Black woman, I can't distinguish between whether it's my Blackness or my womanness. So
I love that. Exactly. But then also, it's all the extra emojis when you send an email, so people don't think you're yelling. They don't think you're the angry Black woman. Or, you have to give an excuse for why you decline to go to an event. It can't just be no thank you, right? When really I'm sitting at home reading books all day and y'all are like, I thought you were the social butterfly. Actually, no, that's my work persona.
Yeah.
It's that. But then I love that you created this podcast as a healing place for you, because I created this podcast as a healing place for me, because I did not pass the Louisiana bar exam and I was dumbfounded. I crushed law school.
Wow.
You got to count that up. I paid for them to recount twice. They were like,
Lord.
No, ma'am, you didn't do it. And I was like, I was shook. And so then I was like, well, what can I do? Well, then I moved back to Ohio. I had to reach out to Louisiana colleagues. Who do you know in Ohio, right? Because lawyers know everybody. Oh, they found someone. I get me a job. People are like, your work is exceptional. You're this, you're that. Move up, move up, move up. Eventually, I have this office. I have the dream legal job, right? I am Molly from Insecure. I am Joan from Girlfriends. Was not actually practicing as an attorney. And so I had to create this show because I used to tell myself, Kylie, you're a lawyer. You're so valuable. But no one else could see it because I didn't actually have a license. Kylie, you're a lawyer. You're valuable. And so I literally would tell myself this over and over. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to find everybody who's not practicing in a formal sense with a law degree. And 4 years later, because this was literally my love letter to myself. Like, no, there are people who choose to even leave and do other things. Yeah. Your education is valuable. So I love that you made that as like something, a healing space for you, because I've never described my show as that, but it's a healing space for me too. So I think that's so powerful.
Well, and the truth is, when I had the idea, I don't even know that it wasn't intended to be a healing space for me. It was, but that's what it is. That's absolutely what it is. Like, it was intended to be an accessible way for people to access anti-racist DEI education without having to go through their employer, because I don't know, do we trust DEI people? Because they're hired by the employer isn't worried about me, the employer is worried about liability, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying this as somebody that is a practicing DEI professional. Like, that's my internal conflict in the profession as a whole. So I just thought it would be nice to have free information conversation that we can talk about that's not attached to your work.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh, I love it. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm the one recording it. I'm like, I can't wait for people to hear it. This is really good. And I mean, when, sometimes people will connect you and you're like, I hope we get along.
Yeah.
But this has been powerful. Like, I can't wait. I mean, we'll definitely keep chatting about this because I'm going to be thinking about all the stuff I can do for you, and to help you
Yes.
with Wills for the People, because the space is needed. It's definitely needed. Everybody's going to know someone who dies if it's not the fact that it's you, and you're going to need to have a will, and you might need to listen to the podcast and get some information. You might need that healing space. You might even just know someone who's in law school and you're like, it might be terrible now, but it gets better.
Yeah.
Right? The conversation is needed. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love being on this show, and I definitely would love to have a conversation with you on Impostrix podcast.
yeah.
Our third season launches in the fall 2024. So, and we're focusing on Black business and entrepreneurship, and then the nuts and bolts of navigating like discrimination in the workplace.
I love that. Okay. So, Whitney, I have to ask you, because I ask everyone.
Yes.
What would you say to a law student or a young lawyer, 5 years practicing or less, about what they can do with their law degrees?
You can do whatever you want, because as we've discussed, it's the JD that's the power. It's the JD that's the power. So if you can actually like work within law, whether that's in policy or litigation or transactional, whatever you want, or you can be, I don't know, an artist. It's you don't have to feel stuck to lawyering just because you went to law school, I think is what I'm trying to say.
I love that. You get to define what lawyering is. And if you need some examples, I have 150 episodes of people doing crazy things with their law degree. Lawyers, hairdressers, all of the stuff. I really appreciate talking to you, and you have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.